The beginning is like slightly deep down. It's really nice.
So you chose.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I took
Cool. Hello, everybody. I'm Aidan. I'm an actuary and a data professional, and this is the AI and Data Meetup Group. So you might be wondering, what's AI and data got to do with actuaries? Well, quite a bit. So actuaries and data scientists share a similar skill set, and we also like to learn a lot from each other. We all do modeling, we all work with Python, and this is a good place for us to learn and exchange ideas and hear about stuff like A/B testing. So without further ado, I'll just pass over to Eugene, the founder of the Meetup Group.
Thanks, Aidan, for that very concise introduction. I guess there will be no further ado. First of all, thank you very much for all coming and for filling out the event much more than it's been filled out lately, I must say. The RSVPs for this one have been beyond the norm, as has attendance. I think Peter's presentation promises to be very interesting indeed. Peter sent me the briefest talk outline and speaker bio I have ever seen. Now, I will read it in its entirety because it's worth it, right? I should also mention that this talk comes on the heels of Peter's lightning talk on the same topic. So we did a condensed version of the same material in what, December last year, November? December. And incidentally, it's a reminder for all of you that you're always welcome to do lightning talks here. In fact, the rule on lightning talks is, I think this is started by Sachin, who's a master of this, because every time Sachin decides he wants to give a talk, he says, Eugene, can I give it a lightning talk like right now? I go, how do I say no to Sachin, right? So that privilege extends to all of you. So if anyone has a lightning talk even today after the main presentation, you're welcome to give it, or some other day. And who knows, your lightning talk may, as Peter's did, evolve to something bigger. So about Peter. Following up on his lightning talk, Peter will use A/B testing to talk about the challenges of applying data science to bricks and mortar retail. Here comes the bio. Peter has worked in actuarial and data science projects in Australia, New Zealand, and the UK, including for banks, insurers, healthcare, and major retail brands. I'm sure there are much more interesting things to hear about Peter, but he's going to tell us. Over to you.
Thanks very much, Eugene. Yes, I like to keep it short. I like to keep it simple, and I've gone all the way back to Sue Schultz in what was it, year 8, A/B testing. I'm sure you all remember t-tests and the like. And I'm purposely going to keep this as non-technical as possible because I want to talk about the environment, the background in which we run our tools and our models. Yeah, so I've gone all the way back to A/B testing, and here we go. Right, so we've been doing A/B testing for well over a century, and speaking of interesting facts about myself, this is roughly where I learned to ride a bicycle. So those fields there, which are agricultural field trials, so those were run through the late 1800s and into the early 1900s, and that's where we started doing our statistical testing. You can see the different bits of grass are growing with different degrees of success. So why are we talking about A/B testing? So what I want to do here is take us all the way back, look at A/B testing. I'm not saying you guys all need to run out and do it. What I'm trying to say is think about where you maybe use it in your unit testing. Think about where you can use it as part of your development process. Think about where you can use it to bring stakeholders along on the journey of what might be some very complex tools, some very complex modeling, but you can use it as a stepping stone, and you can use it as a stage where you can do a bunch of diagnostics. Okay, so it's easy to roll out in the real world, hopefully. Easy to explain to stakeholders, because you've hopefully got 2, 3, 4 test cells. Hopefully the diagnostics, the testing, and the debugging is a bit more straightforward. It's a bit less time consuming than starting out with a full noise modeling. And it then provides you a baseline to roll out some more sexy stuff. Okay, so I'm going to use 2 case studies just as a way of illustrating what I'm talking about. And what I want to talk about is some practical considerations from my background, from my experience. And at the end of this, I've got no lightning talk, so plenty of time for questions and thoughts around A/B testing. Okay, so my first example I'm going to use is a recommendation engine. Okay, you've got a streaming platform, you've seen endless recommendations for movies. But what I want to talk about is when you're shopping online. When you're shopping online, there's a bunch of sort of, I want to say, soft recommendations that come up down the side or all around the screen, especially if you're on a laptop. But there's another type of recommendation which comes up, particularly on a mobile app. It's very much in your face as you go through the checkout process. So you've got something in your basket. We've got a $3.95 bucket of hot and crispy from some chicken shop, and add that to our basket, and it immediately comes up with a set of recommendations. Would you like to add this to your basket? Okay, you might like this to go through. And the order flow then moves on to checkout. You purchase it, you add it to your basket, and you purchase it or you don't. Okay, you put something different in your basket. And okay, we've put a burger dinner in the basket, and we've got a different set of recommendations. Okay, so I could talk all night about recommendation engines. Eugene could talk all night about recommendation engines. But what I want to talk about here is when you start on your journey of rolling out this recommendation engine, you're brought into the business, there's an app, add something to the basket, there's no recommendation screen. Okay, and your job is to put in a recommendation screen. What I'm saying to you is the first thing you do is you A/B test, no recommendation screen versus recommendation screen. Before you kind of go all the way down the sexy recommendation engine route. And why am I saying this? So when you first start out, you may or may not have telemetry that tells you how the customer flows through the app. It's unlikely you're going to have telemetry out of the box that says the customer's picked an item. And even if you do have telemetry all the way through, when we're looking at purchase baskets, we've got the conditional probability trees of adding things to the basket. Does the customer check out? Do they go back? All of those conditional probability trees. Lay it on top of the price points of what we're recommending, the gross margins we're recommending, and so forth. So it gets very, very complicated very quickly. And massive rabbit hole to go down there. Massive value for business. So as much as telemetry is fantastic and it's great for tracking customers through, when you start to add purchases and different price points to it, especially when they are often very widely varying price points, the maths gets awkward and nasty and so forth very quickly. When at the end of the day, we have final purchase details and we have what they bought and so forth like that. So I think there's an analogy here in that checkout purchase data tends to be very high quality. It tends to be linked to cards, and hopefully those are linked back to finance and audited by someone somewhere along the line. So if you can grab that data, It should be there historically. It gives you a basis for doing some initial measurements before you have everything set up beautifully. Okay. So telemetry. So I guess what I'm saying here is telemetry for this kind of situation, really helpful, but doesn't necessarily solve the problems you're trying to solve. Okay, so before we get to the screen, we have another problem, which is we're going to do A/B testing. So we need to decide which test cell this customer is going to go in. Are we going to show them recommendations? Are we not going to show them recommendations? And my, I suppose, strong suggestion is look at seeing if there's something like a session ID or something like that already existing in your system, probably historically already existing, that you can simply go odd, even, odd, even, odd, even. You know, how's it divisible by 3, divisible by 4, whatever your number of test cells is. That gives you a pre-existing metric you can leverage off to decide whether it's a test or a control. And you can go back in time. You can use that as a rule of thumb to go back in time and say, hey, if I split my historical transactions by odds and evens, and this is where it gets really important. If I split my historical transactions by odds and evens, what's the variation in average basket size and average spend? And how long do I have to watch to get those two numbers to come together? Is the average spend stable over time? Is it stable over the day? Is it stable over the location, the store? What happens to these guys in the school holidays when the teenagers turn up in the food courts and buy, plushies, buy drinks, and that's it? So immediately start to see that there are some limitations in a lot of your testing in terms of the means moving, the degree of variability in the day parts and things like that. So, and again, because we're starting off with a really simple way of looking at it, it's easier to sort of pull out. You can pull it out of historical data, do a back of the envelope, and start to manage stakeholder expectations. The other thing we need to talk about is what happens to your app if this is blank? What happens to the app if there's no recommendations? Does it break the UX? Does it break the customer experience? If your stakeholders think that this is going to give you, an extra 20 cents a customer, are they happy to actually turn off the recommendations so you can run a nice statistical test to control? And that's where we end up with ABC testing. And ABC testing is where, well, I call it ABC testing, where you have a set of dumb recommendations. And they're recommendations that might be a drink, it might be fries, might be a dessert, or I like these dipping sauces,
When you say dumb, you mean not connected with the meal?
That's right. That's right. So you can. So there's a secondary motivation for this too, which is if something in your system breaks, you may be able to set it up so it automatically serves up the dumb recommendations. So again, from a UX point of view, the customer doesn't think can't see that something's obviously broken. You've got some basic pictures in there, and it all looks okay. Another benefit is that if you've got some sort of menu staples in there, you can keep on running it at volume. Your stakeholders are likely to be happy with you running 10%, 20% of your recommendations as some fairly sort of stock standard recommendations. And that gives you a baseline to compare how your optimization engine is going. And a little sidebar here, Eugene will know this well. The recommendation engines are a bit of a Sisyphean task, because anything that works really well as an add-on here is going to get taken by the merchandising team and stuck further up the chain, right? Let's go back to the, we've got a bucket here. Well, they're going to do a bucket and a Coke, a Pepsi. That's going to end up further up the chain if it gets added on for a very high frequency. These guys, lots of chicken bundles with drinks and fries on the side. So if you're put in charge of a recommendation engine. Just realize it's going to be hard work keeping it going out of the gate. Like out of the gate, great, but hard work keeping it going in terms of all the best ideas get stolen and moved further up the chain, so that by the time you come to do your final checkout recommendation, all the good ideas have been stolen. So I know that's not very encouraging, but it's like a fair warning.
Sorry, how does that look as an example?
Okay, what's your favorite quick service restaurant?
We'll go Macca's.
Okay, so what's the slogan? What's the movie slogan associated with Macca's?
I'm loving it.
Movie. What's a famous movie about Mac? Super Size Me.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, so make it a meal. Okay, so that's a massive like add-on. You get to the end and you say, do you want to put a fries and a drink with that? That's already in the order flow way earlier than their suggestive cell at the end. So it's been stolen. It's been stolen, if you like.
Oh, so like, gotcha. They're marketing that already, so your engine can't suggest that.
Yeah. So say I buy a curtain rail, and it's a really strong add-on to add the little runners and the little ends to the curtain rail. Well, looks, if that's going out the door like gangbusters, someone's going to build a bundle that has all of those 3 items and merchandise it further up the chain before it gets to your recommendation. So it's one of those things that you sometimes feel like a complete fool because you are swimming upstream like some poor salmon. Yeah. Okay, but the dumb recommendations definitely worth having there because you have business permission. You're likely to get business permission to run them in a measurable volume on an ongoing basis to give you a reality sense check. Now, going back to you should run a blank one, how do you get permission for it? So a lot of this, it's not maths, it's stakeholder management, okay? We're going to come to store level testing in a second, and that's even worse. How do you get permission to run completely blank recommendations if it is practical? And my answer to that is, when you have a big enough system change, pitch it as a unit test, okay? Pitch it as, look, we're going to run it blank, and then we're going to run it with the dumb suggestions. Because what you're trying to do there, you may be able to measure and follow the customer through in sufficient detail to see them take the item, put it in the basket, and follow all of the steps, if you're lucky. But there's lots of places where you're not going to be able to do that. All that beautiful telemetry may be there, maybe not. But if you can see 2 test cells with the biggest possible effect, no suggestions, see them taken up, and it's all going. The media assets are there. They're getting displayed. The customer can see them. Massive issue in online advertising. Okay, and I'll let you in on a little secret. No one's taking any of these guys up, right? Those top 3, probably the only ones that are getting taken out of there. Okay, if you open the app of some random chicken shop on your phone, on my phone, I'm only seeing 2.5 images there. Okay, so it's reasons like this where I'm saying start off really dumb. Make sure you can see it on your phone, but some customer's got a different model of phone, a different operating system, different version of the operating system. And again, if you're doing these tests, go and have a look at the little cells. There's maybe no statistical significance in the fact that no one in that particular version of Android has taken any suggestions. But if they haven't taken any suggestions, get someone with that model of phone and that version to go and check they're being displayed. Like there's a lot of dumb stuff you can pull out when you go through this A/B testing.
Just on that, no suggestions. So you've utopia of online buying is one-click buy. So you then, instead of Googling when they ask for a bucket, right? A Go bucket. The response not be a Go bucket, but one of their most popular ones with a 5% discount or whatever, to try and say this is effectively no choice option, and get a different different result, because the more times they spend in the buy channel, less likely they're going to complete the purchase.
Yep. Okay. So there's a lot of discussion around the mechanics. If you have a play around, you quickly find that a lot of these mechanics will pop up once per session, for example. And so you're not going to, if you say you don't want any of these, but you keep on shopping, it's not going to show you those. In this case, it's probably not going to show you that suggestions again. It can see you're still shopping.
So that's A/B testing on a session ID basis.
Well, so that's the way they're triggering the mechanic. So it's effectively once per session, appears to me, on my phone, on my version. And that's, again, that's when you go in, depends where your responsibility is. If you have a choice in terms of how often to trigger it and stuff like that, that's a whole other discussion. And like you say, abandoned carts are an issue and all sorts. I think the first challenge is making sure something's there and something's you can display it and you can measure it and that kind of stuff, and then you can move on to whereabouts to display it and so forth like that. But it will tend not to pop up random recommendations all the way through the process. Tends to, like, this is one where you actually have to physically click through, versus say like the Amazon website where you've got suggestions left, right, and centre all around the screen and everywhere. This is much more of a you have to click something to get past that screen. So it's a much stronger action there. So I'm just using this as an example. Okay, so yeah, if a lot has changed, it's worth trying to frame a completely blank test, or a test where there's something displayed but it's not available, not something you can buy. So some text or some graphics that's not there for buying, as a unit test in the process of standing up your new version. The other capability that this gives you, if you're setting your systems up so they can explicitly do A/B testing and you can see them, it gives you the confidence to run two different models in parallel. Okay, we're talking about running a dumb recommendations or against your full model, but equally that same kind of setup probably positions you pretty well for actually running two different models, separate models in parallel if you change your versions or something like that. Right. So I'll move on from this. Right. So I think what I'm saying with the A/B testing, it's like, this isn't the be all and end all. This isn't your target, but I think it's an underappreciated step on the way to the sexy model you promise management. But if you stand up the sexy model straight out of the gate, it can be a lot more difficult to debug and figure out exactly what's going on under the hood, and it can be a lot more difficult for you to actually fiddle with what's getting displayed, etc., and actually debug it. So, yeah, that's a recommendation case study. So now I want to talk a little bit about store level trials. So there are a lot of situations where you might still be able to see individual customers. You might still be able to see individual transactions. A bunch of your customers might be logged in. You might have an omni-channel setup. So you might have customers who are clicking and collecting. Might have in-store customers. You might have a variety of channels. So store testing. Some examples where you might do it: new product development, a bunch of stuff like in-store. So new equipment, merchandising, changes to operations, changes to the way the whole sales process goes, technology, and a bunch of stuff you might be doing in Australia at a state level. And right, so I just quickly want to explain this one. So something we've seen a lot of recently is Kit Kat, right? That's not a Kit Kat, that's a Neapolitan Kit Kat. That's a gooey caramel Kit Kat. That's a gold crush. Come on. Right. So look, there's even, I was trying to get some physical aero bars. Okay. So the problem we've got here is we've rolled out our new KitKat Aero Mint. Okay. We've rolled it out in stores. And for those of you who are not aware, in Australia and elsewhere, store scan data is widely available, particularly from the Big Two and IGA. So if you're running a fast-moving consumer good product, you've got an amazing data source of high-quality SKUs, product availability in store, volume, sales, price points, everything like that, which is all great until you introduce that. Because I don't care how many Aero Mint KitKats you sell. What I care about is how many Aero Mint KitKats plus Aero Mint plus KitKats you sell. Okay? Because the Aero Mint KitKat is going to cannibalize against the other two. Yeah? So, you know, maybe 80% of the Aero Mint KitKats you sell have cannibalized one of the two underlying products. Okay? And our stores are massively full of brand extension products. And so what you're actually interested in here is the overall sales of your chocolate bars. Okay, you might have taken the Aero Mint, you put it in a different pack size. So you want some sales metric at a broader category level. Now, if you own the store, you're interested in store sales. If you own, a chocolate range, you're probably interested in the chocolate category or some subset of the chocolate category. Okay, and so this is where we end up doing store level trials rather than trying to measure individual customers, because you then you can do it. You can do it. Often you use specialist tools like preference models and stuff like that. But in terms of actual dollars on the ground, nothing beats scan data. Right. So I mentioned stakeholder management before. Probably nothing is more true than A/B testing in stores. Then stakeholder management is probably your #1 challenge. So you need to find a bunch of test stores that are free from, a different brand extension for KitKat. They're different. They're extension. They're free from other major campaigns or new product introductions that are going to clash. Now, I talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly in my heading. One of the good things with a lot of these trials, from our point of view, is often by the time they get to us, actually, test stores may well be decided. So if it's a store technology, if it's a store purchasing system, merchandising, a lot of these things are actually, you just get told what the test stores are. You might have to manage stakeholders to say, well, it's not going to give us a statistical read, but we can give you something directional, maybe. You haven't given me enough stores, etc. But often that gets taken out of your hands, which in a lot of ways is good. The other good thing here is product extensions, right? We've got KitKat clearly have done it before. So your business crew should actually have a pretty good idea of what the effect size is. Okay, so if they come to you and say, hey, I want to do it, and I want to do it in 10 stores, you can go, well, look, how much of a lift did you have last time? They go, yeah, a little bit. And you go, well, 10 stores it's not going to cut it. It's not going to cut through the noise. So you've got a pre-existing idea of what effect size you're looking for, or what the business expects. And so you've got a way to start off with your stakeholders and go, hey, this is a small effect. So we're going to need, if we're going to get a clean read, we need a lot of stores. So look, that business knowledge is absolute gold, right? And it affects how you're going to approach the problem. And also tells you when you might need more sophisticated approaches, which I'll touch on briefly. But okay, so choosing test stores, free of competing product mix. So obviously we have stores in different settings, and stores in different settings are going to have different product sales mix. So you might sell in a supermarket versus a small format small format Metro or an IGA. So they're competing against a different mix of products. There's some practical stuff about implementation in a lot of cases and supply chains. The supply chain may only want to roll out this product in one state because it's more work to roll it out nationally. Stakeholder considerations here is a funny one. If it's a popular trial, it's a popular new product, you better have it rolled out in stores that the senior management can get to easily. If it's technology related, you want a store that's around the corner from your technology vendor. The engineers can walk around the corner and kick the tires on it. Now, you may, from a statistical point of view, you may go, look, we're sticking it in there, we're implementing it there, we're going to leave it out of our official statistical testing. It's there for the stakeholders. Okay, so anytime you get a test, look at it as something you can take a chance to add an extra store and stick it in front of stakeholders. And for those of you not aware, retail uses a metric called same store sales. So it looks primarily at stores that have been open for 1 or 2 years already before they start measuring things. So very often, putting stuff in brand new stores, it's fine in theory, but in terms of statistical measurement, it's a liability. Control stores, go for your life. You've kind of got a bunch of similar considerations in theory, but in practice, what you want to do, you want as many control stores as possible for each test store. So you want to loosely match them. You can tightly match them if you've got millions of them, but in practice you don't. And you want to match them broadly, again, in terms of stakeholder management. You want to match them in ways that the management understand. You might have some other things up your sleeve as well, but you at least want to match them in ways that store formats, store sizes, like that the management understand, and state. But you want multiple controls per test store. Okay, it depends on how many stores you've got, but it means you can drop the variance on your control measurement, even if you can't drop the variance on your test measurement. Because
oh, sorry.
Yep, go on.
So we're in the middle of Easter eggs at the moment.
Yes.
So there's red tulip, Cadbury. One of my favourite is Cadbury red cherry ripe Easter eggs. Yes. So they're predominantly at the front of the store near the checkouts, whereas the traditional cherry ripe bars are in the chocolate section down the back. So how are you going to leverage your weighting on store location geographically, as opposed to in the same geographical location chocolate bars next to each other? And the price is completely different.
And the price is completely different. Yes.
For the same product.
So there's a whole other area around merchandising, which is a trade term for like putting stuff at the end of the aisle, putting stuff by the checkout counter, etc. Typically, there's actually in the background there's a setup where different product packaging, different product sizes are used for different store locations. So if you walk into your supermarket and look at the fridge section, and you look at the soft drink bottle sizes in the fridge section, there are different soft drink bottle sizes or packaging to the ones on the regular shelves where the soft drink bottles are. In my local one, I think it's the 500 mils in the fridge. The 330, 350 mil ones are sitting on the shelves. And so very typically you can tell from that. Your marketing team will also have a massive merchandising calendar. I was going to make one up, but I ran out of time, that tells you when all of these promos are going on. But a bit more background. I mentioned about stationary means not being stationary before. Easter is a classic example where your product mix completely changes. Come Easter Monday, a lot of stuff disappears or goes on special in the stores. So if you're running a trial over that kind of time period, you've got a massive discontinuity. So look, I'm jumping in here and I apologize. Part of what I'm trying to bring out in the store level to get you thinking about why I want to get you thinking about store level is we walk in a store and actually a lot of the stuff in the store makes sense, but as soon as we go back to A/B testing on the recommendation engine, we kind of forget about it. But if we're running a recommendation engine up to Easter or up to Christmas, we've got all those going home for Christmas Hallmark movies, finding romance in a small American town. You know, come Boxing Day, we need to take all of those out, or maybe it's a couple of days after. So you've got these big discontinuities, which we tend to be good at recognizing in the physical world, but when we come back to the digital world, we completely forget about. So a couple more illustrations of the challenges of stores. This is a TV map of Australia in terms of not so much TV broadcast, but how the marketing researchers think about the TV markets in Australia. The dots are just illustrating store locations. And so you've got a very complex, if you're running media campaigns, you have to pick, and typically people pick state by state, but then some metro media markets. So again, when you're rolling out a trial, you're going to have to pick and choose like what's already running in those markets, what's not. And the other thing I've got down here, again, just to think about, things aren't smooth. This is an illustrative example of foot traffic, pedestrian foot traffic that you might see across the weekdays and weekends. You can see some very big spikes at particular times of day, and what customers purchase at those times of day are going to be different. And then you go to the weekend, and it's quite a different pattern again. So again, depending on what products you're looking at, depends on how much that's going to affect. I'm not saying online's going to look like that. It's not, but we know that there are similar patterns online. I've just gone for an open data source there. Okay, a little bit very quickly, test analysis when you get the results back. If you've got the luxury of getting lots of control stores and they're looking dodgy, you've probably got more leeway to sort of throw them out. Test stores, on the other hand, you need to be phoning the store manager and going, hey, what's going on? You know, why have I got no numbers, no sales for Tuesday? What's going on here? And try, and I want to say, save them. It's not that we're not trying to get a statistically pure result here necessarily, but also you're not likely to have enough data to just happily throw test stores away. The other thing I'd recommend is partway through your trial window, do a trial analysis of your results. Look at the data and start calling up stores, start identifying problems and seeing if you can ring out people and seeing if you can find out what's going on. Okay, and when you finally get to the end and you start to present your results, look, if you're managing your stakeholders well, you might have a very short list of results you're reporting back. But there's a pretty big risk that people are going to come back and ask more questions about. Look, I've got the results on the chocolate category. I've got the results on the Easter category, but what about really small eggs by the counter? And so you might have data on it. But then your challenge is to manage the messaging with stakeholders. You can't withhold the information, but you need to manage the messaging so they understand it doesn't necessarily mean anything. And that's probably the biggest challenge with the store level testing is, once again, managing the messaging back to stakeholders. Back to the earlier discussion, if you know what the expected effect size is out of the gate, and you've got some feel for how many test stores you're being given, you can have a quick stab at kind of like, given that effect size in those stores, do I stand any chance of getting a decent read off this thing? Okay, now, one thing, and I apologize, I skipped ahead that I missed out of this, is one more good thing. A lot of the A/B tests I've been asked to do have actually been for things where the businesses, well, they're going to do it anyway, pretty much. Okay, and so and look, that's not a bad thing. The reason they're coming to me is because they want to know that it doesn't make things worse. Okay, so they've done a lot of work to develop the Neapolitan chocolate with a different colored chocolate on the wafers. So gone to a lot of product development work to do that. And to manufacture them, to put them in the supply chain, to gear up, to do all the promo material. They're going to do it anyway. They're not going to stop doing it, but they want to know, look, is it incremental? Is it giving us an incremental lift? Is it just giving us something new to talk about? Marketing people love, something to talk about. Or is it actually going to hurt our sales? Okay, or our profitability? And what they want to avoid is that last one. It's hopefully unlikely, but the test and learn, the testing is there to make sure they're not actually going to harm their business by the cross effects as well. Okay, so when they're rolling it out to stores, a lot of the rollouts are actually testing not just the profitability, but the supply chain, the call chain. Do they get a lot of customer returns? There's a whole lot of things being tested, way beyond just the statistics, way beyond just the sales and the profitability. So it doesn't necessarily sound like good news if they don't care what I say, but sometimes it's a relief. Okay, so let's.
Sorry, 1 second. So before you said something, if you can't give something statistical, give something directional. So what do you mean by that?
So there's a lot of effort going in at a store level test. A lot of effort, a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions going on. So I've yet to run into a business that's happy with you coming back and saying, "Nah, can't really tell you," right? Yeah. So you've got a level of kind of stakeholder education. But even if they kind of go, look, what's the statistical outcome? They're probably going to want to know, what effect size did you see? Because they are on the hook for growing sales. They're on the hook for growing same-store sales year on year, and it's a tough gig. So if they roll it out and it's going to have a 0.5% incremental benefit, and you can say that's statistically that's robust, that's ironclad. You give me 1,000 stores and it's gold, fantastic. 99 times out of 100 you can't, but so you might be giving them some directional ballpark size. You might be giving them something around the categories, how it formed in terms of the categories. So we looked at the Aero Bar and the Kit Kat. They might be interested specifically in those numbers. And from our point of view, look, it's the business's data. We can caveat all we like. The business owns the data. We have to give it to them, and we have to try and manage their expectations, because ultimately they're making the decision as to whether they're going to roll it out nationally. And so, a lot more things get trialed locally or on a small scale or in one pack size, for example. A lot of things get tried in one pack size before it gets expanded to the whole range of pack sizes. So it's not necessarily an all or nothing. This is not academic publishing. This is not an all or nothing decision. Like, it might feel like it sometimes. It's usually not an all or nothing decision. Giving people confidence that hasn't made things worse, giving them some feel for what's going on with the category, and I haven't even touched on like what competitors are running, what campaigns competitors are running, what new products competitors have brought into the market. So if you're bringing in some more wider selection of sort of green mint chocolate things, it might be because your competitor's doing the same thing. So you don't expect that actually you're going to get a big sales lift from them. You're doing it to I want to say match a competitor. You're seeing customer interest in the category, and you're trying to meet the customer where you think they are. So I suppose it's a long answer, but you're playing against a very complicated retail landscape with competitors and a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff you may well not be aware of. They might be aware of. I've had good results with the midpoint check-in, because often I'll go to a midpoint check-in and say, hey, look, this is what we're seeing. Obviously, it's not the result. This is what we're seeing going on, and they'll mention something else that's going on in the market. So, you know, it's frustrating, but it's the reality of you know, of competition.
Gotcha. So as long as it's not worse, then
so some trials you're looking for a lift, right? If you're doing a pricing trial, you know, you developed a new pricing strategy, then you're looking for what's it doing to customer accounts, what's it doing to sales, what's it doing to margins, and again, still against the backdrop of what competitors are doing, but you're definitely hoping for a lift there. So yeah, it depends on what it is you're testing.
if your p-value is close to what you want.
If you're mentioning p-value to your boss, you've lost already. Right. Can we grab the microphone? I think we're probably at the stage of any more questions.
Just one question.
Good. Just hold on one second, just for the recording, so that I don't.
Just going off that p-value question. Is there a concern that you need to go through, like, deal with p-hacking? Because you get like a test, like an experimental test that you kind of design, run through the test, run through the measurements, do the analysis. The stakeholder comes back, what if this? What if that? What if this? You have to deal with that?
Absolutely. So the first time I worry about it is when I'm going through and cleaning up the test and control stores. Is that I'm reluctant to throw out outliers, particularly on the test side, because you tend to have not enough test stores, and so you ring them up and have to be very clear. Do I have to throw the store out? Is there some adjustment that I can make that actually, and exactly that, you have to be careful you're not hacking the p-values. The bigger concern for me normally is there's multiple considerations, because if you think about a chocolate in the supermarket, you've got, you know, what is the company's wholesales in the supermarket, all the categories. What's their chocolate sales? What's their pack size sales? What's their Kit Kat sales? Or what's their Easter egg sales? And, you know, you've got a whole lot of hierarchy of different levels you can measure. And normally my approach is to try and start off with a relatively consistent standard of, like, what am I trying to measure going in, and what level I'm measuring it at. And again, it's a socialization question, and it's harder if they haven't done it before, don't do it very often. And then you treat the stuff below as, I want to say, informative rather than robust. But you're not going to get academic level of p-values.
I think I understood you correctly. When you said stakeholder considerations, were you therefore suggesting that if you're testing a range of stores, you'd have it almost randomly over, say, the eastern suburbs? So you wouldn't have a bunch of stores around, say, Bondi Junction. You'd have one at Bondi Junction, one at Tamarama, one at Randwick, ignoring Coogee, etc. So you're trying to get rid of geographical bias. Is that what you're suggesting there?
Yes. Yeah. So as much as you can, you want a random selection. And like I said, you might put some test stores in that are not random, but you don't use them for measurement. The counterpoint is sometimes you are testing something which has a potential to interact with other stores. So if you think about supermarkets, for example, you often pass several different versions of a supermarket. You're coming, leaving your house, walking, going to the train station, coming into town, going home again. And so you may worry about interaction between those different locations. And so when you're building that, you can do stuff like using card data to understand what the overlap of customers is between different locations. And so if you've got one location where you've raised the price and one location you haven't raised the price, that may impact the customer's behavior. So there's a sort of a random, but sometimes you have to think about other factors that come into play. In that case, it might be more around choosing your control stores carefully rather than your test stores.
Thanks for the insights. Just a quick question, wading into controversial territory. Wanted to know what your thoughts are on using synthetic data for some of the A/B testing.
So I suppose the value I see in a lot of this is there are more efficient algorithms, there are more efficient, learning approaches, but a lot of the benefit here is getting a signal and just making sure all of your systems are working. So if you can set up your whole system to work off synthetic data, great, but it's probably the kind of almost the opposite use cases. You want to be putting real data through this because you want to see where things break. It's much easier to see it here than it is to see it running a more complex model across the top. It's more, I'd see it more as in a lot of digital cases, I'd see it much more as part of your build up to the full thing. Synthetic data, I don't see a reason why you couldn't run it through it, but you may not run into a lot of the unexpected things that you're looking to pull out. Yeah,
Especially for real world use cases.
Yeah, I mean, by all means, like get everyone in the office to go in and usually there's a testing version of an app. Usually get everyone to go in and load it onto their phone and go and order something and blah blah blah. So all of that stuff is great, but yeah. So synthetic stuff, it may be a use case, but I'm not familiar with that in this context.
Thanks, Peter. You mentioned the tests aren't pure A/B testing, so I'm actually curious, like, what are majority of time the other business considerations?
So probably the biggest challenge straight away is having no suggestions at all. So if I'm on the app and first of all, if my algorithm doesn't feed the part of the app that expects to display the items in those boxes, the app may not behave well. So one approach is just to put some other media assets there saying some new product or something's happening. But also the customer experience, that they may feel the customer experience is bad if that screen doesn't pop up. But more critically, on an ongoing basis, if they believe there's a substantial financial lift from displaying suggestions, and you say, hey, like 20% of the time I'd like to display the control, well, that's cash out the door. That's cash they're not getting in their pockets. And so that's ultimately likely to be the biggest objection to running a pure control. And so that's when you'd say, hey, we're going to run a pure control whenever we have some major system upgrade, but normally we're going to use a sort of a dumb set of suggestions, a standard set of suggestions as our benchmark, rather than a pure control.
Thank you.
So when I go shopping, I'll pick a figure, 20% of the time where I do shopping at 8 o'clock at night and their product isn't on the shelf because it's sold out. Yep. So how do you simulate, going back to synthetic data, I'm talking about maybe quasi-synthetic data where you've got to take into a consideration the theoretical stock being available and then being able to do proper analysis on that rather than.
So so if you're talking about supermarkets, there's enough of them that it's not to be a problem. When I've worked with FMCG data, I've usually had stock levels available, particularly any time through COVID. Obviously, it's been pretty crucial.
Hour by hour stock level. End of
daily stock levels.
Sorry,
like something. I think it was a daily metric.
End of day.
So it's not perfect, but it's indicative. And look, it's not perfect, but given the volume of retail stores, volume of supermarkets, etc., if you're in this FMCG space, it's a pretty amazing data set. So yeah, so there is some indicator of out of stock. And the other thing, if you're in that space, if I'm CatCat, I can buy the competitors' sales data. So it's not just my own sales data. It's a very good data source in terms of getting read on what competitors are doing, particularly in terms of price discounting, because that's a very, very strong effect over and above whatever else you're doing. So being able to see that from a competitor.
Excuse me, have you?
Just wait, just 1 second for the microphone.
Excuse me, have you tried to do causal analysis to figure out what is causing really clients to pick this over that, and then based on that you decide how much the sales are going to be? What is the driver?
So there are a bunch of tools around preferences, conjoint preference models, and things like that. So if you've got a bunch of different products, you can put them in front of a panel, of a survey panel, and you can get them to rank them. And if you get enough people, if you design it carefully and get enough people, you can use that to construct a sort of a revealed preference model and use that as the underpinnings for your, say, pricing, for example. Yeah. So in practice, you've got a lot of products, and it can be quite difficult to tease out customer preferences and customer preferences consistently. Even like chasing people through an app, it can be difficult to. It's hard enough. You can condition on an app. You can condition an outcome based on what they first put in the basket, for example. That's quite a useful way of looking at customers' ultimate purchase. But outside of that, there are a bunch of preference tools that you can use in a customer survey sense. It's a big exercise, but you can use it to understand customer preference.
So you basically mean that outside of experimenting, like A/B testing, ABC testing, there is no other way to kind of come up with some kind of accurate estimation if we introduce this new product, AeroMint, KitKat, how much the sales are going to be, or separately?
So look, honestly, the best way is, so you've got a bunch of people in business who've done it before with other brand extensions, and so if you're KitKat, you've already done it a lot of times. You have a feel for how incremental these different items, these different things are, and so if you've got a new one, you kind of go, well, look, what's the strength of the aero bar? Like, if I'm Lego, right? I'm Lego, and I want to go, hey, I'm Lego, and I added Star Wars. What was the lift, right? If I'm Lego and Harry Potter, great. If I'm Lego and Crocodile Dundee, Crocodile Dundee is not such a strong franchise. I'm not going to get such a big lift. So you've kind of often got some degree of comparator going in, based on the strength of the things you're putting together. Some brand extensions are completely new, but a lot of the time, a lot of the ones we see are, they are existing ideas.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Peter. I'm the UX service guy in the room. So
you don't want a blank set of suggestions?
I probably solving the same problem from a different perspective. So you mentioned it a couple of times in there, but I wanted to highlight what you talked about, which is in trying to solve this unusual statistical pattern that we're seeing, or lack of pattern. Actually going and talking to people is a really important way forward. So I do it from my seat, but also the best data people I've worked with do it the same in reverse, which is you gather together with the mixed brains in the room and think through what's actually going on. And then the only other tip that I've got is, typically you hinted at of getting people to walk through the app or the device in the office with the diversity of different apps. Same for physical spaces as well, is literally walk the ground. Go into you're wondering what the hell's going on. It's the Gemba concept, which is go to where the action is actually happening, and it often gives you the, that's what's going on.
Absolutely. And back to the point of roll out your test in a bunch of stores where management and your engineers can walk into. Okay, you don't need to measure them. You know, if they don't, they don't pop up in your random selection. Add them in there, but don't use them for measurement. It'll make them happy. It'll solve, to your point, helps solve problems. And yeah. Right. Anyone last questions? I think we're out of time. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, Peter, for that terrific presentation. Now, is there anyone here who wants to do a last moment lightning talk? I see Sachin in the audience. It's always a danger of that. I thought you might want to talk about your latest adventures. There's always something interesting.
You mean my job situation or just
whatever? You got something to say, Tony?
How long do you want me to talk for? 2 minutes, 3 minutes?
2 minutes is good.
Fine.
Actually, you can use a lectern like.
So we've got a group of analytic people in the audience. So I want to get a gauge, because I posted on my LinkedIn page a repost of a person that was an interesting article about scientific research. And they were talking specifically about the university sector, which I've worked in, but it tweaked my mind and I reposted it. And I got quite a lot of responses via LinkedIn saying, yes, it's piqued my interest. So I thought, throw it out to the audience and see what they think. In the world of analytics, their basic premise was I produce a scientific paper, right? Well researched, and it has a lot of links to various sources. So the author was saying that there is a overwhelming groupthink mentality in analytics now, is that if I post more links to my theories, I get better credence. Premise one, right? Okay, makes sense. More people agree. The second that I put to it is that what happens if that link is only available for a day, a week, a month, and then it disappears? So if I'm producing a scientific paper and I want to give my scientific paper credence, do I create a whole lot of websites that support my view for a period of time and then all of a sudden disappear? Second question is that, say, for example, in the university sector, I put a link to a paper in the university sector, well researched. Am I expecting that research paper to remain online indefinitely? Or should it be there should I be there for a year or 2 years, right? Because if it disappears in a week's time, I'm starting to think that this research paper that's being presented is a bit bogus, because they've put up a whole lot of links to, and that was the first premise that the author put forward, is that it's creating a whole lot of supporting evidence as far as, I support my view and here are 1,000 links to my paper, therefore my paper is worthwhile. So a show of hands, if I produce a document on analytics and I produce a link to a website, who thinks, and this will be progressive, that the website should be available more than 12 months as opposed to less than 12 months? So who thinks it should be available, say, more than 12 months? Ooh, okay, keep your hands up, keep your hands up. Okay. So you're saying that if it's less than 12 months, keep your hands up, it's interactive. Keep your hands up. If it's more than 12 months, you have credence in that website to say, yes, it's not a It's not fake news. And the people who say have their hands down, okay. So the people who have their hands up, should it be 3 years? Does the website, if the website is down after 3 years, is that okay by everybody? No. Should it be longer? Because it then gets down to a cost, right? If you say it should be like the university websites, you expect the papers to be there forever. Because in the old days, they used to publish research papers and it was printed on paper and pens and it was filed away in the university. You can go down and find it. So the question is, should it be there for more than 3 years? And if you say yes, it should be there for more than 3 years because it's got credence, it's got credibility, I can go back. Who should pay for it? Because if it's an individual person who's done the research, not assuming it's not an academic research, but an individual institute, good quality at the time, but they've disappeared because they run out of funding, where is it? And me as an end user, because I've looked at the productivity report and I guarantee you it's 1,000 pages and it's got like 2,000 links in it. Do I, as the end user of the productivity report, because it's produced by the government, Australian government, go through every link in that website to then determine whether it's there for a year, there for 3 years, there for 5 years, there for longer? That's my piece. Oh, I've got questions.
If you're publishing it, the Internet Archive is there.
Sorry?
The Internet Archive is there. So if it's trivial for archive. A lot of Wikipedia references back to articles that are archived in the Internet Archive.
So Wikipedia, that's a very good question. Should we, as a group of eminent thinking people, just rely on Wikipedia as our encyclopedia?
No, I think what I'm saying is that if you go and look on articles of Wikipedia, footnotes, in a lot of cases people have captured a web page as a citation, but they've also archived it on the Internet Archive. So what they're actually pointing to is the Internet Archive version of the web page.
Yeah.
As it when they
on an archive app.
And so that if you're in the situation of producing a large report and a lot of sources, then as part of that process going to the archive and
should you move it to an
and making copies of it.
Yeah, go to a Wikipedia or a university or some level of archiving organisation.
No. I mean specifically, you can put a link in the document to the Internet Archive copy of the document that you make when you do produce the report.
But if it's to a link that is originally just on a commercial website and the website dies, then
that's what the Internet Archive links in the web archive stage. Yeah.
I'm just asking the general question: how long should the links in a well-researched paper be available to people? That's my point.
Thanks, Tony. Are there any more announcements? And in particular, we're always looking for job announcements. Everybody always wants to hear those. We actually had a near miss, folks. We were going to get the head of an exciting new consulting company come and do an announcement, and they're hiring. But unfortunately, he thought it was going to be on the 17th today, not the 15th. So hopefully he'll be presenting at the next one. So any more announcements of any kind? Doesn't have to be jobs. Come on. Got somebody that want to get off the show? Well, if not, thank you all very much for coming. We still have some networking until we get thrown out at 8, is it?
8 o'clock.
Right. So do hang around. Do ask Peter more questions. Hopefully he'll hang around and want to answer. And thank you all very much for coming.